The forest clearing fell silent except for the gentle crackling of David's campfire. His German shepherd Rex suddenly lifted his head from where he'd been resting, ears perked and alert. David followed his companion's gaze into the tree line, squinting through the dancing shadows cast by the flames. "What is it, boy?" David whispered, his hand instinctively moving to the camping knife at his belt. Two small figures emerged from behind a massive oak tree, moving with hesitant, synchronized steps. David's breath caught in his throat. The beings were humanoid, but clearly not human. Their skin held a subtle blue-green tint that shimmered in the firelight, and their eyes were larger than any terrestrial creatures, filled with an intelligence that seemed ancient despite their obviously young age. They were twins, David realized, identical in every way except for the slight height difference. The taller one, a girl he somehow knew, stepped protectively in front of her brother, though both trembled with fear or cold. "Please," the girl spoke in accented but clear English, her voice barely above a whisper. "We mean no harm." Rex, instead of growling or showing aggression, whined softly and took a tentative step forward. The dog's tail gave the slightest wag, as if recognizing something in these strange visitors that David hadn't yet grasped. "It's okay," David said gently, raising his hands to show he meant no threat. "I won't hurt you. Are you lost?" The boy, David, decided to think of him as David too, but distinguished him mentally as little David, clutched his sister's arm. When he spoke, his words came out in a rush of pain and abandonment. "We were bad," he whispered, tears streaming down his alien features. "Mom left us. She said we brought shame to our people." The girl, Mino, David found himself thinking, though he didn't know why the name came to him, nodded miserably. "We cannot return home. We have nowhere to go." David felt something crack open in his chest. He'd seen that look before, in the eyes of Rex when he'd found the dog as a puppy, abandoned on the side of a highway, scared and starving. It was the look of creatures who had been cast aside by those who should have protected them. "What's your names?" David asked, settling back down by the fire and patting the ground beside him in invitation. "I am Mino," the girl said, her voice gaining strength. "This is my twin brother, Keth." "Well, Mino and Keth, I'm David, and this is Rex." The dog had already decided the matter, padding over to the alien children and settling down between them and the fire. "You're welcome to share our warmth tonight." As the twins cautiously approached the fire, David began to understand their story. They were from a species called the Zelani, refugees whose ship had crashed on Earth months ago. Their mother, overwhelmed by the shame of their failed exodus and the burden of caring for children in an alien world, had abandoned them in the wilderness. "Among our people," Mino explained as she and Keth huddled close to Rex's warm fur, "twins are considered cursed. They say we share one soul between two bodies, making us incomplete." David shook his head in disgust. "That's not curse. That's a gift. You have someone who understands you completely, who will always be there for you." Over the following days, David found himself becoming an unlikely guardian to the alien twins. He taught them how to fish in the nearby stream, showed them which berries were safe to eat, and helped them build a small shelter. But more importantly, he showed them something their own people had failed to provide: unconditional acceptance. Rex seemed to adopt them as his own pack, following them everywhere, and sleeping curled around them at night. The dog's simple, honest affection began to heal wounds that abandonment had carved deep into their young hearts. "Why do you help us?" Keth asked one evening as they sat around the fire, his English improving daily. "We are not your kind." David was quiet for a long moment, watching the flames dance. "When I was young, my parents told me that being human meant taking care of those who couldn't take care of themselves. Doesn't matter what species they are." Mino looked up from where she was braiding grass into rope, a skill David had taught her that afternoon. "Your people value compassion over conformity?" "The best of us do," David replied. "We don't always get it right, but we try to judge others by their actions, not their differences." 3 weeks later, when the Zilani rescue ships finally located the twins, David felt his heart break a little. But Mino and Keth had changed. They stood straighter, spoke with confidence, and most importantly, they no longer saw themselves as broken or cursed. "We will tell our people about humans," Mino declared as the alien ship settled in the clearing. "About kindness without condition. About acceptance without judgment." Keth nodded firmly. "We will make them understand that being different is not being wrong." As David watched the twins board their ship, Rex whining softly beside him, he realized he'd learned something too. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their resilience. It was their capacity to see worth in others, even when those others couldn't see it in themselves. The ship's engines hummed to life, and through the transparent hull, David could see Mino and Keth pressed against the window, waving goodbye. They were going home, but they were no longer the same frightened children who had whispered about being bad and abandoned. They were going home as ambassadors of hope, carrying with them the knowledge that somewhere in the universe there were beings who believed that every life had value, regardless of how different it might be. Rex barked once at the departing ship, tail wagging, as if he too understood that they had just made the galaxy a little bit smaller and a lot more connected. In the years that followed, when the first human-Zilani cultural exchange programs began, David would often smile and scratch Rex behind the ears, knowing that sometimes the most profound diplomatic missions started not in government halls but around a simple campfire, with nothing more than kindness and an open heart.